Attwood Show, Adventures in a Meat/Cosmic Soup. Haven't decided yet. So today we're going to talk about something very dear to my heart, very, very interesting. It should be a big interest to you all, and that is the science of the pyramids. Just a little bit of a backdrop on this. About 5 years ago, I was getting ready to build a pyramid in my garden because I'd read up on the healing power of these pyramids in Russia, which basically you put a pint of milk in and it wouldn't go off. And I thought, well, you know, what happens if you put a human being in there? That'd be really interesting. And I was going to build one out of orgonite. I didn't get around to doing it, and then I got very busy. 5 years later, here I am, and I'm very pleased to introduce two very, very interesting gentlemen. One is Dr. Charles Ziese over there, top left, from the Pyramid Science Foundation. Hello, Charles.
Hello, how are you, Mark?
I'm very well, thank you. And hopefully beneath that is Dr. Mike Pascoe. Hello, Mike.
Hello, pleasure to meet you. Thank you for having me on.
It's just, I wasn't joking. This is a really, really interesting subject for me, and I think the viewers are going to love this. So why don't we, who should we start with? Who should I start with? Who wants to go first?
I think you should start with Charles. I'm kind of his wingman today.
Yeah, and it's Charlie. But anyway, yeah, I'll start off. I mean, you mentioned 5 years ago. It was almost 6 years ago when David Wilcock did a series on Gaia TV on his wisdom teaching series that discussed in a 10 episodes, the Russian pyramid research. And that's when I got interested. I was an old investment banker from Wall Street, and I had kind of gotten sick of that. And I can go into that later, but you know, I was tired of screwing my customers, to be honest. And so I got really excited about this because there was science behind it. I was a biology major in college. If I hadn't had a car accident, which was going to force me to take another year of college to get into med school, I would have probably gone on and been a doctor, but I went to Wall Street. And so I got enthused about this, and really that's how five and a half years later, that, you know, I'm here, I'm in the midst of writing a book on this. There is so much science to this that, you know, it's going to take a whole book to really explain it. So,
okay, so that's a really exciting and interesting. Yeah, so you were the right time for you, basically. You were ready you'd be working for the devil, and you saw the light, and you came out. And pyramids. If I was in your position, I'd have done exactly the same. I was just, you know, my life was in a different position. But one of the things that I am a big fan of, Charlie, if you don't mind, is sequential versus emotional logic. So most people might take this from the point of view of saying, right, this is what a pyramid is what it and then come to the conclusions. Emotional logic is the other way around. It's like the way we tell jokes. We tell the result and then blah blah blah. So I think would be really useful for the viewers is if you could start with the summary of what you found that these pyramids can do for people, and then we'll go back over how you got to that point. Would that be all right? Sure,
that's fine. That's what got me started as well. The Russian pyramid research is very extensive. It was funded in large part by the Russian government for public health benefits, and something our government certainly has not done to look at inexpensive and very effective ways of providing for public health. But just to summarize some of the information that comes from the Russian pyramid research, timely today, which is of course COVID and infectious diseases, there's a lot of research that was done on mice, indicating, for example, if they were injected with typhoid fever virus, that if you did a control study and you put one group into a control and the other group lived inside the pyramid, the survival rate was 10 times higher inside the pyramid, 10 times. So when you had a really high dosage, you may have only had 3% of the control group that survived. But in the pyramid, you got 30% to survive. When it was a lesser dose and maybe 6% survived outside the pyramid, 60% survived inside the pyramid. And they also went on and looked at mice because and looked at, why is this the case? How does it work? You know, is there science? Is there something that's going on? Well, what they found was, just like in you and me and Michael, as we get a little older, our thymus gland, which is the organ that produces what are called T cells, which are key to immune function, it starts to deteriorate. It fattens up, it shrinks. Well, in the mice, what they found was the thymus literally began to regenerate in these mice and grew larger, and that resulted in more T cells and much more immune function. And I don't want to bore your audience, but the secondary aspect of this is that the T cells lived longer. And when you do research on T cells, if they live longer, that means they have a better history of all of the things that they've been exposed to before. And so
they got to go to
you're
T-cell
able
college.
to develop that immune response much more rapidly. So that's just a summary of some of this stuff. We can talk about free energy. These pyramids were found to create tremendous amounts of free energy. At the top of the pyramid, they put capacitors on these large ones they built, and they not only would they spontaneously charge, but the capacitors would blow off the top of the pyramid. So there's tons of great information.
Charlie, I just want to interject and ask you a few more questions to maybe explain a little more extensively about the research. For instance, the salt and pepper that they introduce into, and the one that I tried to find this video, I saw it with myself. Mark, you'll find this really interesting. Dr. Golod, it's one of the larger ones, you know, probably over 100 feet in Siberia.
Right.
And he took just a regular plastic water bottle and put one inside and one outside. Okay. Did you see the video, Charlie? Did you ever see that?
I've seen it. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I can't find it now. So anyway.
I can give you a link to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one outside is frozen solid. Okay. It's a brick. The one inside is not frozen at all. Okay. Right. But the interesting thing when Dr. Golod picked up the bottle like this, and he just kind of gave a little karate chop at the bottom, and the bottle froze from the bottom up in about 2 seconds, right, Charlie?
Well, that's right. That is absolutely right. Yeah.
You know, did they actually build a prison out of granite that had?
It wasn't a prison. Yeah, let me pick up on that.
Okay. But let me just interject. You know, granite has crystalline quartz. Yeah. Salt is a crystal as well.
Right.
Okay. Right. So these crystals within the structures, and this applies to the Giza pyramid, I think they're some sort of capacitor for the energy that's created in the vortex of the pyramid. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I think that's right. I was just going to say, I mean, we didn't go and haven't in 2021 either, nor in 2020 because of COVID, but in 2019, I must have attended probably 15 expos around the country, including Conscious Life Expo out in LA. But, you know, we had thousands of people sit under these pyramids at these expos. And, you know, the second most common response, the first being, oh yeah, I feel something, was that I feel peaceful. And that, I think, is really, really important because it touches on the experiment that you're talking about. They actually took table salt and stored it inside one of these large pyramids and distributed it throughout the prison population in Russia to about 6,000 prison inmates over 20 different prisons throughout the country. And every single one of the wardens said it was almost like somebody had changed out the prison populations because all the violent behavior went down. There were no negative incidents. There were no deaths, nothing. So
that was just from salts.
Just from storing the table salt that they put onto their food inside the pyramid.
How long for?
And Charlie, if I recall, it was only 48 hours, I think, that they actually stored the salt.
I don't know how long they stored it, to be honest, Michael.
Okay.
Anyway, they've done the same thing with seeds in agriculture. You could store the seeds for a period of time and then go plant them. You'd get twice the output. If you put the pyramid in the field, you got 4 times the output. So there's some amazing things that these pyramids can do. And the purpose of the foundation, that you can see the logo behind me, I set up this foundation about a year ago because of two things. One, we don't have the full scientific results from the Russian studies. We only have summaries and abstracts. And I must tell you, as an aside, after 2 years of attempting to get in touch with him, I am now in touch with Dr. Ghalid, and we are using a translator here in the States who's from Russia. So I put out my first set of questions to Dr. Ghalid, as well as some of the research I'm going to be showing you. So hopefully I'm going to be establishing a collaboration. One of the things I want to see if he can do is give us the full research results.
Yeah, I mean, you've only been at this 5 years compared to how long was he at it for?
Oh, he's been at it for about 30.
Yeah, so
what happened was, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the scientists had funding and facilities, but all the projects were canceled.
Yeah.
And so, Ghalid said, hey, this is what, and as Charlie said, they said, if it's something about health, do it. And so that's how this got started. It was funded, facilities, all the projects got canceled.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've not really had time, Charlie, to do long-term studies, but what we have got a lot is of anecdotal information, correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, is my microphone okay? Can you hear me now?
Now I can, yeah.
I said that since you've got involved with this, you've not really had time from a scientific point of view to create case studies, but what you have got is a lot of anecdotal evidence, correct?
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, we've done, and that's what the foundation's for. We only got it up and running late last year, and I've gotten a couple of significant initial contributions, but we need funders. We've got an organization that's out looking for grant money for us to do this research. So we're in the process of doing that now. But yeah, we need money. We need volunteers. We need lots of things to help.
I'll volunteer. I'll sit in the garden for a year in a pyramid.
There you go. There you go.
I think my kids might knock me out of it a few times, but
Mark, before you go on, I want to interject as a doctor what he just said about case studies and everything else.
Yeah.
You brought up something earlier and it'll tie back in. We are a non-linear system.
Yeah.
Show me a straight line in nature, but in the human body. And so, but medicine is a linear left brain.
That's what I meant when I said case.
Yeah. So
linear,
yeah. And so pretty much every case study that has been done in the holistic realm is considered by the medical system to be anecdotal.
Yes.
The first 100 years of research by the medical side into chiropractic was an attempt to defund and defunct them somehow.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, every one of them came up with positive anecdotal data.
Yeah.
Okay.
I fully get that. That's actually,
yeah. I was saying that more for your audience.
No, you're right. You're right, because I was making an assumption people would understand what I meant, because I see the way that medicine is done.
Right.
As something that was taken over by the Rockefeller Institute in the 1890s.
So do I. Yeah.
And they've done everything they can to protect their agenda of eugenics and profits. So that's why there's no profit in someone who's dead. Oh, I know that.
There's profit in people that are sick.
Yeah.
And there's no profit in someone who's healthy.
That's true. So we're going to screw them up in every direction. So have you got any headline stories about the effects that these pyramids that you've been creating and working with have had on human beings?
Well, the best set of information, and again, we're going to have to call it anecdotal until, we get some scientists to kind of document this. But last year, we did a study on 50 people in the early days of COVID. And we didn't know, because we don't know today if somebody gets tested, whether they have COVID or not. So, but we took 50 people who had flu-like symptoms and subjected them to a 30-minute session sitting inside the pyramid, using sound healing in conjunction with it. and we can talk about that in a minute, but we played solfeggio frequencies through a caduceus coil, and there's science behind that because a coil will put out scalar waves as opposed to waves in the audio range, and that is accepted by the body's human DNA much more easily. But anyway, after that 30-minute session, every single person's symptoms had gone away. Some of the people needed a second session in a day or two, but they were healed. And,
just after 30 minutes?
In 30 minutes, yeah.
In one sitting?
One sitting, yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting.
So
just wait until you hear my own anecdotal case, and I'm going to wait. But Charlie,
I want to get to yours.
I know. I'm waiting. I'm loving this.
To talk long term, before I started building these 5 years ago, every single winter, first of all, I weighed about 80 pounds more than I do now. So I think it helped me to lose a lot of weight. But also, I used to get at least one major respiratory infection, usually in January after the holidays, and it would last for a month. And I mean, I'd cough my brains out and so forth. I haven't had a sniffle in 5 years. And I know Michael can tell his story, even more profound one than that. So I don't know.
Well, actually, it might be a good idea, Michael, to do this now, because
you
go into more detail about the pyramids, but I think the human interest aspect of this is really, really powerful. So what's your story?
Yes. Well, okay. So I'm not going to go into all the accolades of my professional background, but I've been a chiropractor since 1996. I became a chiropractor because at 32 years old, I was a professional athlete for a windsurfer, martial arts instructor. And I reached across the couch Sunday morning, picked up the section of the newspaper, and I was, oh, wow, that's weird. And 10 minutes later, I'm on the ground. I couldn't walk for 2 weeks. So that I'd already had knee surgery. I was like, no, I don't think I like the guy that last name is surgeon. But honestly, chiropractors scared me because when I would crash my motorcycle or whatever, I'd hear crunch and pop and it hurt. So I kind of had a fear of, but then I realized I have less fear of them than I did of, going down the surgery route. Okay, so it was about my own healing, but I always knew in the back of my mind, if I could figure out my case, because every chiropractor I ever saw, they're like, you're the most difficult case I've ever seen, including my cranial colleagues to this day. But I knew once I found cranial work, I knew that this was the right path. So, but when I graduated, I was guided to a technique that's very unique. It's called cranial facial release technique. And it's based on, if anyone who knows what Rolfing is, someone in your audience does, it's based on Ida Rolf's work, and it's the session called the finger technique. Now, I'm not going to describe it anymore, but that was actually what gave me my function back. Because I would have, my back would go out I'd start to exercise and it'd blow out again. So when I found this technique, I hit the ground running in 96, and I've done it ever since. And it really, I'm just a conduit between, I say God, but my patient's higher power and me. When they say when two people gather, well, I knew that when I had a person on my table, that was a church of sorts, not non-denominational.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to fast forward to the pyramid experience. So I have an extensive background in I started using cold lasers 20 years ago when they first came out.
I've got one here. They're great.
Do you?
Yeah.
We can talk some more about, I owned a $15,000 cold laser that was more, musculoskeletal.
Whoa.
The laser, I just pulled up a picture of my treatment room with the pyramid, and those lasers are very unique in that we can talk about that more. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there. This is a big hook, so you're going to want to talk to me some more, whether it's on or off.
Go for it.
From the cranial work and receiving that for so long, one of the things it does to the brain, neurologically, it reduces the mechanical stress so that your brain and your spinal column function better and communicate better. It's a lot like as if your head were a pair of shoes and you got born with a pair of shoes that were a half size too tight. And I'm the guy that comes on and goes, oh, let me just loosen up those, cut those shoelaces. And You know, some people, no.
That's actually really weird because I did an email today and I mentioned tight shoes in the email.
Nah.
I'm not surprised.
No, because these are the synchronicities, right? Because I actually did my analogy for this whole pandemic is that when it's over and we go to the other side, it's going to be like taking off a pair of really, really tight shoes. So
I saw that, you know, I saw that one and I thought of what I just told you, and I didn't say it, but I remember now that when you said that, I said, oh yeah, he's right. It really is. Yeah. Spiritually speaking, you are spot on.
Yeah, I think
with that. You are 100%. Okay, so I'm going to use kind of a comparison between a computer and our nervous system. Okay, so like there's an input and output. Okay, so in our body, the input are the nerve receptors. We have them in our nose, our eyes. They're in our muscles. They're in our joints. The ones in our joints are called proprioceptors. And those tell our brain about our position and function and movement in, I'll call it gravity. We both know it's not really gravity, but yeah. Okay, so in gravity. So neurologically, it improves that function. So you can look at the postural photos before and after on my website, and you'll see that. Now, what applies more to where I know you want to go with this and where this really does go is it also mechanically decalcifies the structures of the brain.
Hallelujah.
Okay, it's not a it's a very intense treatment. Many people have completely faced their demons right on my table, and I just had to hold space for them. Okay, so now with that said, that work is like upgrading the hard drive. Okay, yeah. the hard drive. Mm-hmm. Now, after that, I did an exchange with a practitioner who does a brain balancing system. It's a biofeedback system, but this was at that time only a practitioner. You couldn't, you know, like now I have a system that I'll introduce you off air, and I know you're gonna love it. So basically, this system, they put this EEG probes. So they do 8. They do the frontal lobes, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes. Okay, the major lobes of the brain. Now, part of the problem, what I believe is it's not just the pineal gland, and this is from research. There's the toroidal field is set up between the pituitary gland and the pineal gland, kind of almost like a positive negative of a battery.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not just the pineal gland. Anyway, so by mechanically decalcifying the structure of my brain for 20 years, okay, then I came across this, I just call it brain balancing. There are many permutations of it now, but this one is the only one to date that I have still found that is a real-time feedback mechanism. Okay, the one I'm using right now, it's a photographic and voice imprint. So like halfway through the session, it's still based on who I was here, but it's, 9 minutes later and I'm not the same person. Okay, mm-hmm. So this one is a real time, and it was 5 sessions, 5 days in a row, 2 2-hour sessions. Okay, and this whole technology, what I'm going to show you afterwards, is a fast track to meditation. It's like I wish I could get this technology to Nino, because between the two of these, it's really good for traumatic brain disorders, TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. Anyway, so that system is the software upgrade. Okay, on my last day of doing that, I'm going to close it up here. On my last day of doing that, as soon as the machine was turned on, I accidentally went through a wormhole. I'm not kidding. I've never told anybody this because no one would even believe me.
Well,
but now there's enough of us. Well, of course you do.
Yes.
But and it was the most blissful. Okay, I never brought my awareness to the chair I was sitting in my office. I could have. So I was in that chair for 2 hours. And when I was so I went to, it's a classic Hollywood, woo. And then I ended up in a place that was like in the Matrix, the the construct. When they first go there, it's just white. That's what it was the whole time I was there. And I'm just standing there. And so then when the session ended, I zipped back, but I didn't do anything there. But I didn't want to. I was like, wow, this is cool. So I came back and the practitioner immediately said, what happened? What happened? I told her what I told you. I said, why? She said, so she's looking at, it's like a mixer for music, but it's my brainwaves, okay? She said as soon as she turned it on, they all went bing and pegged right at the top. And she said, I almost stopped the session because I thought there was something wrong with the machine, but you seemed fine, so she let it go. So I was in that chair for 2 hours. Where I was, who knows? Okay, so right after that, I started getting very, very sick, okay? Now I'm gonna show you a photo of what I looked like early 2013, because what happened was, if everybody could do what I did then accidentally, it would be over. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so I started getting really sick, and it ended up, I just came down with this horrific multiple parasitic infection. So I'm going to show you this as a pre-photo to my testimonial, okay? Because the photo alone is a testimonial. So this is what I looked like before I found a naturopath or even had specific viruses diagnosed. Now, prepare yourself. It's not my best picture. Okay, I'm very clinical about my own. So, I mean, if you want to ask any questions, I don't know, are you live with your audience right now? Or?
No, we're recording this.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, go ahead and ask me any questions. This is the outward manifestation of the multiple parasitic infections I had. Parasites are ubiquitous. Every person here on the planet has at least one.
Yeah.
But we've kind of set up a symbiotic relation. Some of these I got when I was kid.
Yeah.
So this is an outward manifestation on the skin of this inward problem I knew was there. It's a red rash. I had dry, flaky skin. I went to an MD to get baseline labs. All my labs were normal. So my MD said, get a good skin cream and lose 20 pounds. So that's when I was like, let me go get my 2x4. All right, so I'm going to take that down. All right, so then found a naturopath. He specifically diagnosed me, and he was using a combination of energy type work, using electroacupuncture and some other things, Royal Rife machines, combined with pharmaceuticals, anti-parasitic pharmaceuticals. Now, that started getting me a little bit better, and I had some horrendous symptoms. I don't even want to talk about them on air unless you want me to kind of, I'm not embarrassed. So
you tell away.
Okay. So I had, first, one of the main things, I had constant brain fog, and I was fatigued. I was sleeping 10 to 12 hours a day, but I couldn't walk to the mailbox without taking a nap. Prior to this, I was up at 6 a.m. surfing, and then I'd go to work and and every morning I wake up, okay, I'm going surfing, and then 10 minutes later, it felt like somebody punched a hole in my gas tank. Okay. This is because parasites are active at night, and they were disrupting my REM sleep. So my body was resting, but my brain wasn't. Okay. So Dr. Ian really saved my life just by I was slowly dying for sure. And I'll talk about my NDEs some other time, but Dr. Ian turned the corner for me to the point where I could start to think enough on my own. Okay. That's when I saw the same show that Charlie saw with David Wilcock. So this is the classic.
The same show. That's must be where I got this from.
This is the classic. There are many paths up the same mountain. And eventually I ended up calling Charlie after I did my own thing. So I saw Wilcock, and I still wasn't well. I had chronic diarrhea, chronic fatigue, brain fog, and I had to walk around in public looking like that. So when I went shopping, people looked at me like I was the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So anyway, I saw Wilcock, and it took me a couple of days because I go by the philosophy that wisdom is knowledge applied. So I thought, I have an engineering background. I used to be, I have I love flying, as you know. And so I said, I can figure out this mathematics. So I did. And after Charlie and I hooked up, I realized that mine were a bit too shallow, just by a few degrees, but they still work. So I went down to Ace Hardware and bought, what was it, like 3/8" wooden dowels for $20 and a hot glue gun. And after I'd done all the calculations, and I made a base and then figured out how to, if you look at my pyramids, they're like teepees where you take the verticals and I use a bungee cord and then you open it up.
Yeah.
And it's cool because you can put a crystal on the top, which I did with, anyway. So I made this one, it was about 30 inches tall, and I put my water under it. Okay. So the next day I started just drinking that water and didn't change anything else, which is key to actually knowing what helps. If you try 10 things at once.
Yeah.
The next morning, after a full day of just drinking that water, my diarrhea was gone. It was gone in 24 hours. So I kept going, started building my bigger ones, and then I found Charlie, and that's when we started interacting. And Charlie, why don't you step in now and tell them, it's a good segue to explain how, unless you have any other questions about my statement or I mean, you can look at my face, look at me compared to that photo.
Yeah. I mean,
and so, okay. So yeah, just to finish up, I'll pull up a picture again of the latest setup I had with a pyramid. It had a giant quartz crystal in the top as a capstone. And in each corner I had amethyst crystals, which I never used to believe in. And then a massage table. So you're lying, your torso is basically underneath in the pyramid. And Charlie can explain the zones in the pyramid. There are different zones of how, the energy kind of vortexes at the top. This is why you may remember when Dave was talking about, he said the larger ones, the workmen, when they put the capstone on Golad's pyramids, they started getting lightheaded and dizzy. They almost couldn't put the capstone on because there's so much energy moving. So anyway, that's my story. And I ended up with 3 10-foot pyramids in my yard that coincidentally ended up being like a perfect Orion's belt alignment. And I just put them where they would fit. And I had so there is also, and this will go back to Charlie, there's an accumulation. I know this because of my own experience. My house, there was this cool bubble over the whole, I had my own little firmament. So segue to Charlie.
Well, before we get to Charlie, I need to.
Okay.
I need to add something to this because.
Yes, absolutely.
When you said you went through a wormhole,
I didn't know if you'd want to talk about this right now.
Well, no, of course I do, because on Saturday I had a healing from a woman in Australia called Harms, and she used this.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
She used this, which was given to somebody by another species on a beach 3 years ago as a technology to help the human race heal. And she used that, and I'm telling you, I was in another dimension for a couple of hours.
I don't doubt it.
I was shooting through time and space like it was the most natural thing in the world, and it was just extraordinary. And then I think it was Friday night, and then the next day I woke up full of beans, and then I just collapsed at like midday and had to sleep until Sunday. And I felt after having done that, going through that wormhole and being where I was the most amazing experience of my life. But the blowback almost killed me. Okay. Yeah. So back then, this is my understanding, all the portals on the planet were controlled by the dark forces. Yeah.
To some degree, by the veil, if you will. And our star families had a hard time seeing all the specifics and details of they knew this stuff. I accidentally blew right through that veil. So when I came back, they said, this guy has the knowledge and the ability to do this with other people. Okay. So me being here right now, I don't know what the blowback is going to be, but so anyway, go ahead and ask me what were you asking me about the wormhole?
Oh, no, I was just saying that I had this pyramid.
Oh, you had that, yeah.
Last Friday with this, so there's a lot to this, and I think there's a whole another chat another day because I want to.
Well, that symbol hit me somehow. There was a download. I just got a download from it.
Well, you'll see that all over the walls in Egypt. It's everywhere. I think it's called the Ankh pyramid or the Ankh pyramid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to Charlie and talk. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Mike.
I'm gonna just go warm up my tea. I'll be listening.
Yeah, that's cool. So Charlie, you started manufacturing them, right?
Yeah, I started manufacturing these about 3 years ago. At that time, the geometry wasn't very precise. The Russians never put this geometry out. And one of the key things that I was able to do was to figure out the sacred geometry of these pyramids, because this is all about geometry.
So can I ask you a question? What were you working off before you worked that out?
There was one article that was available on a site called GizaPyramid.com, and it was written by a gentleman named Krasnoholovitz, and he was one of the researchers who had worked with Galad on all of these research projects. And he did get that published, and it's an interesting sidelight. All of the scientists tried to get this research published in the West after the fall of the Soviet Union, and they were summarily suppressed. There was nobody, no scientific journals would take this up and pick it up. And so they got it on this one place. And that gave a crude summary of the geometry. So that's what I had to work with. But really, what I guess the first major thing that I was able to do was to figure out the geometry. And that is based upon this number. It's a ratio called phi, P-H-I. You find phi in the Giza pyramids, you find them in the golden pyramids and so forth, but it's what I call a two-dimensional relationship. You could find a ratio of the height to base length, or the side length to the height or the base length, but you couldn't get that in this pyramid. So the first thing I had to do was to figure out what the geometry was. And that required going through a lot of torsion physics and research from Russia. And I realized that a very real possibility was to look at spheres and circles, because creation starts in a sphere. And so no one had ever looked at it, at least in the West, from that perspective. So what I did was to say, well, let's see what would happen if I took a series of circles in 2 dimensions, whose diameter, and stacked them up in a row with whose diameters decreased by this ratio of 1.618033999, and it goes on forever, and see what we get. So I put that together. I went into GeoGebra, which is a geometry software program online, and I figured out the dimensions based and the angles based on that crude geometry. I was 0.2 of a degree off, so I knew that I was on the mark. But I was able to verify this in a number of other ways, which we may or may not have time to talk about. But in summary, the first verification was that the slant angle, which is this angle going up this way from the floor, is exactly the same as the apex angle, which would be the top angle of the Giza pyramid. Now that can't be an accident.
So I'm just going to interrupt each other. This phi is the golden ratio, isn't it? It's the Fibonacci.
That's the golden ratio, yeah.
So anybody watching this should go and research the golden ratio,
That's
Fibonacci
right.
sequence, PHI phi.
That's
it's in your eye, it's in every flower, it's in all of creation.
Everything.
It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah. So once I discovered that, I just to kind of continue on that path, I happened to, and I thought I was right, but I had no way to confirm this. I came upon the material of a gentleman named Marshall Lefferts. Now, Marshall wrote a book about 1.5 years ago called Cosmometry, Exploring the Holofractal Nature of the Cosmos. And that's a pretty hefty title, and it's a heavy read. But Marshall, for those of you who are familiar with Nassim Haramein, Marshall was the president of his board of directors for 15 years up until he published the book. He worked on the new Thrive video and so forth. Well, he had developed what I'm calling a 2-dimensional version of this geometry of the pyramid, and he called it the Phi Scaling Angle. So in 2 dimensions, he saw all these things in nature, like birds flying, in the sky in a V, and it would be that angle. Wood bark. He's got a whole bunch of things that confirm this in nature.
Our chakras and the Hawaiian Islands also fit that.
Okay, so
I just want to tell the viewers something. Charlie's just mentioned something called Thrive. That's a movie made by Foster Gamble and his wife, and you can find that at Thrive Movements, thrivemovement.com. And the first film was about 10 years ago. The second film was last year, I think. Thrive 2. And Nassim Harriman is an expert in that film. He talks about sacred geometry, which is where we're leading to with this.
So
it's called Thrive.
Yeah.
Thrive.
Right. So anyway, Marshall and I started to communicate. I interviewed him about a year and a half ago, and we realized that this was an important geometry. Now, part of my book is going to be visual because I have found this, and this is maybe a topic that might be of interest to your listeners as well. The Platonic Solids, knowledge of this geometry goes all the way back to the Hindus. And one of my viewers named Patrick Koster, he's actually from Europe. I think he's from Belgium. And I remember his name because he wrote me one day and he said, gee, do you think, look at these Hindu temples, do you think that they match up? Well, that started me on an exploration that continues to this day. I have figured out that the Hindus knew about this geometry. It's in all of their temples, the Buddhist temples as well. And I'm going to chronicle in the book how that information and that geometry went from there to the Middle East, then captured during the Crusades by the Knights Templar, brought to Europe into the cathedrals and so forth, and ultimately into America. However, it's virtually lost in religious architecture today. And that's a tragedy, but it's because this information is being suppressed.
Yes.
And it's also being inverted.
Okay, so look, there's two big points there. Firstly, Charlie, why do you think it's being suppressed in one sentence, Charlie?
I'm sorry?
Why do you think it's being suppressed in one sentence?
Well, I think it's because once you understand, let me step back and talk about the quadrivium for a minute. Plato taught the quadrivium. The quadrivium is numbers, geometry, music or harmonics, and cosmology. And what my research has proven to me, and I hope will prove to most people, is that yes, numbers will become geometry, which will become harmonics, and that is the key to the creative process. In fact, my most recent research has indicated that this very geometry, if you're familiar with the Platonic Solids, a gentleman named Buckminster Fuller in the 20th century developed what he called the Jitterbug Concept, where these 5 Platonic forms or solids, I prefer forms because it's very malleable, will change and morph in a specific progression. And people have seen this in other situations where we have like electron micrographs. You can see that matter is organized in these sacred geometry patterns called the Platonic Solids. All of this information as well goes way back to the Vedas. We've been culturally appropriating this in the West for ages. And the reason why I think it's being hidden is once we understand that we have harmony, that we are in harmony with the universe and that the universe is harmonic in nature. Why do we need an external God?
Exactly. That's the perfect answer.
That's it in a nutshell. The Catholic Church, just to give an example, way back in the 13th century, there was a priest named John Duns Scotus, and he developed what is now called the dunce cap. He looked at the witch hats of the day, all the same.
I never do that.
Exactly the same thing, and he started wearing these hats, and he was able to achieve a connection with his higher self, with God, whatever you want to call it. And so he started advocating the concept of a metaphysical God. Well, the Catholic Church was not going to have anything to do with that.
They didn't like that, did they?
No, they vilified him, and it became an object of ridicule to have to wear a dunce cap when in
that's
fact
really,
it's a source of enlightenment and illumination.
Oh, that's so brilliant, because that kind of the way that they destroy things like that is because I remember as a kid, the hat with the D on it, and
that's right.
And basically, no kid ever wanted to wear a hat like that, and it's
That's right. That's right.
And that's so powerful over time. It's like for me, it's a bit like the Guy Fawkes story. I think Guy Fawkes' story was a false flag in the 1600s, and they created this character, Guy Fawkes. And then every year, we in England would all build a bonfire and then put a guy on top and burn him to death. But he was the guy who was trying to burn down the corrupt parliament. And, you know, and so the whole country was locked into this mindset of don't fuck with parliament because this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Something that happened 400 years ago. And if people can understand that, then they can understand why, how it's so easy to get millions of people to wear a nappy on their face for a virus that's never even been isolated.
Sure.
So anyway,
to take this to the final kind of step in this progression of knowledge of this sacred geometry. When I decided to write the book last summer, I started reading some books on sacred geometry, so I'd be, prepared and could do a good job. Well, one of the classic texts is by a gentleman named Robert Lawler, Lawlor. He wrote a book about 40 years ago, Sacred Geometry, Philosophy and Practice. Well, on the very last page, there's this picture with 9 concentric circles, and it has the Platonic solids in it and so forth. And he started to give some information, but it's very generic. Well, about that time, speaking of Nassim Haramein, they give his Resonance Science Foundation gives a free course on kind of introduction to their physics and so forth. And one of the things that I saw in that course was Metatron's cube. If you're familiar with that as a form, it's the 2-dimensional version of the Platonic solids. You can find all the Platonic solids in that 2-dimensional diagram. Well,
a Metatron is an archangel, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So in this diagram, I started, and Nassim even said in the course that one of the major shortcomings that we have is seeing our world in 2 dimensions rather than in 3 or 4 or more. So I kind of looked at this diagram and I said, I wonder what would happen if I started to visualize it, and I saw it as being a diagram in 3 dimensions. So I said, well, let me diagram this thing out and see what I come up with. Well, I tried putting it inside the pyramid geometry, and guess what? It fits like a glove. This is a medieval, maybe going back thousands of years, this could very well be the diagram that shows us that the geometry of this pyramid, and that's why it's there for thousands of years, is the pathway of the creative process. And that's a pretty big thing to say, but I've also been working on this in the context of harmonics and so forth. So just suffice it to say, it's a work in progress, but this will tie into Nassim's work with the torus, and all of the geometry, I think, will ultimately all fit together.
So you had your own personal eureka moment when that happened. Have you got some images to show us of this?
I do. I can do that, sure, because some of that will be relevant to this discussion. So let me go back to the beginning here. I wanted to show everyone what my pyramids look like. My company, where I sell these pyramids, is called Stargate Pyramids, and you can find these at stargatepyramids.com. So here are, I make 3 sizes of pyramids, small, medium, and large. I make them in white and black. Now the objects on the bottom are called caduceus coils. And as I mentioned earlier, these products, when you play solfeggio frequencies on these coils inside the pyramid, it greatly enhances the energy field and helps with healing. But
I just want to say something, Charlie. If anybody watching this is going to go off to this website. Wait until the end. Charlie's got a discount code on this for
Yes,
people watching the show.
right.
So watch all the way through because there's a lot more to learn.
So anyway,
Charlie, the first question I'm going to say I need to ask is, when I first saw these, I was surprised there were no walls on them. So that's the first thing. I just want to get that out of the way.
No, that's fine, and I think it's appropriate. The research that has been done,
and just to interject, there's no metal.
Right, there's no metal in these.
They can't be made of metal.
Yeah.
So what are these made of?
These are made out of PVC pipe.
Ah.
Yeah.
The same thing Golod used.
Golod did extensive research on metals, and they really wrecked the energy fields that come forward. And most people say, how can this be? Every pyramid I see on the internet is made out of copper, yada yada. But in fact, my most viewed video is a video that demonstrates the difference in the energy fields between copper and PVC. But anyway, we'll move on. Here's a diagram quickly of the way I came up with this. As you can see, what I did was I took circles in 2 dimensions, and their diameters as you go up decreased by phi, or 1.618. So I took the first one was diameter 1. You divide that by 1.618, which is phi, and you get 0.618. Divide that again, and so forth. You build it, and that's the way I came up with the geometry. Now, I told you that before that there were some significant correlations between the Giza and the oh, I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question about walls. The research that we've done, and also if you go into some of the channel material like the Law of One material that David Wilcock uses and others, the walls don't seem to be important at all. And so I haven't made them yet with walls, but I know Golod did, but we get tremendously good results without them. So we'll leave that question, at that point for now. But what this, again, I don't want to bore your viewers with geometry, but what I'm going to show you is this is
there's my symbol
of the Giza and the Russian.
There.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
there it is.
Russian pyramids.
Wow.
In juxtaposition, and you see, or if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that's F where my cursor is. The slant angle of the Russian pyramid is 76.345 degrees. Now you go over to point E, and this is the apex angle of the Giza pyramid, and it's also 76.345 degrees. So they may look visually different, but there's a significance here that I still don't fully comprehend. But this is not an accident. They knew about this Phi Fibonacci series geometry way back in Egypt and before. Now here's an interesting one. I just picked a few out of the book. This is a hieroglyph from the Temple of Karnak. Measures perfectly from the previous page. You saw 76.35 degrees. That's as close as I can get with this protractor. And this on the right is a picture from the Mayan calendar, or sometimes it's called the Aztec sun calendar. But you can't tell me that there wasn't some sort of common influence in the development of those two depictions. So now to get to what I was talking about earlier, and we'll get to, this is the depiction of this diagram. It's in Robert Lawler's book. And when I drew that in 3 dimensions, you end up with the diagram on the right. And that in and of itself, I didn't bring this into the discussion today, but it looks pretty on the surface, but a lot of people, and rightly so, could say, well, you could fit any circles in there and it would work fine. But I have proven through a variety of ratios and connections. If you notice, some of these, like the bottom circle, catches the midpoint of another circle. And the same thing happens going up here. There are ratios galore that correlate with sacred geometric ratios like the square root of 2, the square root of 3, and phi. So I am highly confident that this could not happen in any other geometry than this geometry. So I'm actually working right now. If people are interested in sacred geometry and are looking for a great resource, go to cosmic-core.org. This is a website that is maintained by Renee Hoadley. Renee is working with me. She's excited about this discovery, and she's actually working to put together, to rough out a theory of the creative process within this geometry. And we hope to be, announcing that and demonstrating that as she proceeds on. So that's of interest. Here's some other interesting geometric things. In short verse, the pyramid uses what I'll call a Phi Cubed geometry in terms of the ratios of height to base length. And if you're familiar with fractals, for those in your audience who aren't, that's those wonderful YouTube videos where you see a diagram and you can keep drilling down and you find the same form and so forth forever and ever. And
well, we're all fractals.
Yeah, we're all fractals. So what's interesting is that very Phi cubed geometry that's in the pyramid, although it's going to show up dimensionally different because we're talking about irrational numbers and imaginary numbers here. But the Mandelbrot set, which is what this diagram on the left is also scaled in Phi cubed. And over on the right, this is a picture that I got from Renee's website. I think it's from the 12th or 13th century. It's entitled God is Creator of the Universe. And what's fascinating is we think that that knowledge has always been on an upward spiral. This painting is from the 12th or 13th century, and we supposedly only discovered the Mandelbrot set in the 1970s, Renoir Mandelbrot. Well, you can see that this drawing looks very much like the Mandelbrot set. And what's even more fascinating when I see this, every time I look at a geometry, now I have to go measure it. And sure enough, the compass that is used here has the exact 76.34 degree slant angle. And, again, is that an accident? No, I don't think so. I think it correlates with the diagram that I showed you before. People were hiding this information in sacred texts, drawings, and buildings as well. So
it's all there when you know to look for it.
Yeah, exactly. So I see it everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into this because I don't want to bore your people too much, but this is a new proof that I've done using harmonics that shows that you need a combination of Phi scaling and the Phi cubed, I'm going to call it octave. For those of you familiar with playing the piano, you know that an octave on the piano from middle C to the next C up above, the vibration doubles in that octave. Well, in the world of scaling, we use Phi as the scaling ratio, but we need an octave that's different than Phi itself. We need one, and it proves out that it's Phi cubed because that's what keeps the relationship between what's called the arithmetic, geometric, and harmonic means all in sync with the Phi ratio. So more work and more information to come on that, but that's a work in progress.
Hmm.
Now, I don't know if people in your audience are also interested in EMFs, but
well, yeah, of course we are. I am. They are. Of course, we all should be.
Yeah, EMFs are one of the most insidious forms, I think, of pollution that we have on the planet, and 5G is going to make it even worse. And it's a real challenge for people to understand 5G or EMFs in general, because we've done a lot of videos over the years on EMFs and remediation. And I did one with the pyramid, but I had never done one until yesterday. And I just put it out yesterday on the YouTube page, testing the changes in life force in the presence of the pyramid and the caduceus coil working together, and its impacts with, and what impacts, say, a cell phone showing a video, in other words, actively working, does to your life force. So, we did this test yesterday. My life force, just to give you a base load here, I work with an expert dowser who I've worked with for a couple of years doing this kind of work, but my life force outside of the pyramid with no phones on was 32,000, and it's a relative scale. But when I was
Bovis means, Charlie, is that, I've not seen the word Bovis before. Is that the scale?
Yeah, it's a scale that dowsers use, and it's a subjective scale. So, all you can do is look at it on a relative basis.
It's all got to be relative, yeah.
Yeah, it's all relative. So don't let the numbers, look at the relationships.
Yeah, the relationship.
Yeah. So when I had no cell phone, my life force was at 32,000. Then when I held the cell phone in my hand with the video going, it went down to 16,000. In other words, it literally was in half, just having that cell phone in my hand with it on. But by the time I went inside the pyramid, I held the phone and had that coil on inside playing frequencies, it went up to 500, actually to 1 billion. So that's off the charts. You understand what I'm saying? So
how did you feel?
What's that?
Did you feel it?
Oh, I feel it all the time. Yeah. It's almost like my body is so used to this now that, it's not as impactful as it used to be. But for people whose energy fields are way, way down, they would feel this in a heartbeat, particularly people. I mean, we've had people who would come up even without the caduceus coil at the expos. And if they're energy sensitive, they can literally feel it 10 feet away, 20 feet away. So
I have an anecdotal story about that when you cut back to me.
Yeah. So anyway,
let's ask you a question before you move on.
Yeah.
How do these rods create that energy field?
They have an impact on the torsion fields. And torsion, now we're getting into torsion physics, but the torsion fields all move in spirals. Yeah. And the torsion field that we're working with, if you can visualize the pyramid as being the bottom half of a torus, which then spreads out, but the magic is done at the very tip of the pyramid. But in summary, all torsion fields, at least in our universe that we've been able to measure, move in a clockwise fashion. Now the fields that we are gathering and amplifying and clarifying in the pyramid are coming from the earth and moving upward. There are also fields coming down with another spiral. So really, if you get this idea, you've got a centripetal and a centrifugal field going on, inside the pyramid, both expanding and contracting.
That could be related.
Charlie, our last conversation, we got into talking about how there's actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was an inverted etheric pyramid above this one.
Yeah.
With a counter rotation in the plasma.
It's coming clockwise, going this way, so that's kind of, that's counterclockwise to us. A way to visualize this is it's called the right-hand rule. If you were holding a pipe or a pencil like this, wherever your thumb's pointing and your fingers are going, that's the direction of the torsion field. So this way it's going clockwise, this way it's going counterclockwise.
Okay.
So
would this relate to this? Would this be the same sort of thing as Kundalini energy?
Yes. Oh, I would say so. Sure.
That's
sure.
what it is. It's like a
Yes.
Kundalini device.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Effectively, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that spiral is our DNA.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah. We haven't even talked.
This is a vortex. This is, yeah.
Our DNA is structured in the form of a spiral, and
this is why when
Charlie, since we just touched on this, let me pull up those 2 slides I have.
Okay.
One of them you had on, you know, the ones I'm talking about with the what do they call it? The phantom DNA or
the phantom DNA experiment. Sure.
Yeah, let me pull these up while you're talking. Go ahead.
This is also how, as a young pilot, I was soaring in a glider, the same as the birds gain height without much energy because they're following that.
That's right.
That's my thing is flying gliders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not flown one for a long time, but I love gliders.
Me either. I love it.
Yeah. So
I told you I have a bunch of radio controlled ones, Mark. When we get together, I'll let you fly one.
Oh yeah, I'm coming.
Okay.
I just got to be able to get on a plane and get somewhere first. I've been stuck in this.
Do you know what the world speed record for a radio controlled glider is? 550 miles an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say about 400 or 500 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. Anyway, go ahead, Charlie. You know, this is your slide.
Well,
we both have used this, and then I want to pull up one after you explain this.
I did a video on this recently because I think it's something that's really powerful. You know, you've got 3 glasses there, and the first one represents a random, you know, flow of photonic energy inside of a particular medium. And what the scientists decided to do was they wanted to see what impact the introduction of some DNA would do to these to the order of these photons. And as you can see in the middle diagram, the photons end up collecting exactly around the pyramid. The pyramid, excuse me, around the DNA. The DNA literally forms, you know, those into a you know, a pattern that mimics the pattern of the DNA. Now, the final part of the experiment, which is fascinating, is that when they took the DNA out of this container, you would have expected that the photons would have just gone back and sort of
randomized.
Randomized again, but they didn't. And so one of the things that they've determined in Russia as well with respect to these pyramids is that once you've had them up and running for a while, they have, I don't know if it's permanent, but you can take that pyramid down and that same field will continue to exist, just like in the phantom DNA experiment.
Well, I think this reminds me a lot of the morphic resonance field, Dr.
That's right. That's right.
Sheldrake.
Yeah.
And when you said, I don't know if it's permanent or not, no, it's not, because we die. But we die all the time. But time is relative anyway. But that's exactly what this is. It all makes sense. And that was taken down for being pseudoscience on TED in 2012.
Well, I'm sure.
Well, it's been documented. It's been documented now that our DNA is a light emitter and receiver.
That's right.
And I can refer to Bruce Lipton. He taught it when I left. He was just beginning his path into this direction. And
he's the guy who wrote The Biology of Belief, right?
That's right. Yeah,
an amazing,
brilliant man. Brilliant. I mean, this is right after he said, "Okay, I don't want to be a regular cellular biologist," and so he started teaching at a wacky chiropractic college, and now he's brilliant man. But this, you know, our DNA is absolutely a light emitter and receptor. And Bruce talks. There's a great book. I was going to save it till the end, so just have everybody write this down. It's called Hope for Health by Dr. Scott Monk. There's a great explanation of the fact that our nervous system does not have the bandwidth for the amount of communication that we're actually receiving and transmitting. And so it's more of an we're primarily an electromagnetic communication system, and the most fundamental form is light. And when I get to segue in, I'll show you the lasers that I'm using and talk about the physics of that a little bit, and it'll make a lot of sense.
Well, I just
go ahead.
I just want to make a comment here about, I was very pleased when President Trump mentioned light during his press conferences last year, and then mainstream media laughed at him oh, we're going to shine a light and so. But all of this technology is definitely coming because that's why he's dropped.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic.
So go ahead, Charlie. Unless Mark, you want to.
Yeah.
Charlie? Are you done with this slide? Can I switch to the next one?
Yeah. I'm done.
Okay.
There's one last topic, which is a whole new rabbit hole for your viewers potentially, and that is the subject of what's called the Tartarian Empire. Are you familiar with that, Mark?
Yes. All these buildings.
Okay.
Whole
See, I'm a newbie. Yeah. I'm a newbie in this one, but I'm fascinated.
Underground in Australia and America.
I'm fascinated by this.
A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed the author of a new book on this topic. His name's Jamie Lee.
Well, I'd like to read that.
World Tartarians, and we had a fascinating discussion. But long story short, one of the key things that people, that I'm going to be showing in the book is that the geometry of all of the spires and so forth in the Tartarian Empire and all of this the remaining Tartarian architecture around the world, a lot of it has this geometry in terms of spires. It was used for free energy, it was used for healing, and so on. So, now you get into the topic of alternative history and how come we don't know about this. Well, the theory, as you probably know, of the Tartarian Empire was that there was a worldwide empire that had free energy, health, longevity. If you go into the Gothic cathedrals, some of them you're going to find all of these cymatic diagrams on the floors and so forth. So what we think were originally these cathedrals may have been healing centers. We just don't know. But there's plenty of information about that, but it's a fascinating topic to explore when you go into it in terms of religious architecture. For example, you look at the Salt Lake Temple, the Mormon Temple in Salt Lake City, classic example. It has this geometry in all of its spires, and they were, the founders of the Mormon Church were Masons. So I think that's where they got it. But a whole new rabbit hole to go down.
And it's a brilliant rabbit hole as well, because for years one of the things I enjoy doing when I'm traveling, especially in Europe and places where there are old buildings, is looking for the churches in the towns, because most of them have pine cones on the fences. They have them everywhere.
Yes.
And the pine cone is the pineal gland.
That's right.
And I've always wondered why the churches put it there, because I knew that they were hiding the abilities of the pineal gland from us.
Well, that's right.
I was always assuming it was like hiding in plain sight, but it never really crossed my mind back then that the churches were actually healing centers, because even the church in the village I grew up in is 1,000 years old, and it's exactly that shape.
Yeah.
Wow.
You go and look at
it all changed. They all became square about 300 years ago.
Yes.
Excuse me.
You can look at the clock towers and the bell towers. They have a lot of them have this geometry, but it just goes on and on. So
I see it everywhere. I can't not see it.
Well, once you, like I said earlier, once you've got an idea of some of this, like Charlie has to measure everything, now he sees it. It's the same as me with symbolism. Whenever I'm looking for it everywhere.
Yeah.
But look, we could talk throughout. Maybe we should talk again. But I'm interested to know about these products of yours, Charlie. How where do you make them?
Well, I have a shop near my home that I make them in, and I ship them worldwide from here. I've shipped to 6 continents. Haven't shipped to Antarctica yet, but
well, you can't ship to Antarctica because it's not a real continent.
Yeah, I know.
It's a plate.
So does that mean you're a flat earther, Mark?
It's a realm. No, I think that this is all a realm.
Yeah.
I don't think it's flat. I think that's a dimensionally incongruent question.
The only question I have about that is the visual, with all the new optics, they can say that the curvature doesn't, but the Earth could be just a lot bigger.
Oh,
that would explain.
Well, I think the Earth is a dimension. So
yeah. So a lot of people can't handle that. A lot of people can't handle that.
It changes based upon what you need it to do.
Every planet, they're alive. They breathe.
They are. They've all got a consciousness.
They do.
The whole universe is alive, and we're part of that, which is what they've locked us off from. which is why I'm so interested in the pyramids, because I want one of these pyramids. Charlie, can you send one to me?
Can I send you one? Absolutely.
Yeah, get over to Ireland. So how do you use it? What do you do when you get one?
Well, first of all, it's easy to set up. It takes about 5 minutes to put it together, so it's really not a problem. But once you do that, a typical routine, I prefer to have my pyramid inside my bedroom. It does have an impact on the energy fields for a great distance away from where it is. But when you're sleeping, that's a time for your body to regenerate. And I think that having the energy field optimized in that way is particularly helpful.
So you don't have to be inside it to benefit?
No, you don't. But I do spend 30 minutes every morning, first thing when I get up, and I meditate, for half an hour, 45 minutes, but try to do a minimum of half an hour inside the pyramid. And, I'm 68 years old, and I did break my ankle about 10 years ago, my left ankle. And so since I was compensating for that, my right knee were bothering me for the next 5 years. But when I sit under the pyramid in the morning and get that 30 minutes of, energy, I have not felt pain since I started building these. And so there you go. There's a classic example. So, I'm
wondering, I spend a lot of time sat in my kitchen making videos these days. I wonder if I could put one around me.
Well, I'm sitting inside.
Well, I was just going to say, look at where Charlie is sitting. I had to leave all mine on Maui, but I know they're doing their job even though I'm not there. And I'm getting my one from Charlie tomorrow. It arrives, and But when you're ready, I can start to talk about some clinical applications when Charlie is finished.
Yeah. So
I'd be really interested in that.
Okay.
I just want a quick question before we get to the clinical applications. I'm interested in whether you've recorded these energy fields using any kind of recording equipment like infrared cameras or anything like that. Have you got any?
The only thing, and I'm sure that the Russians developed meters that would detect this. The father of torsion physics is a guy named Nikolai Kozyrev, and he developed some stuff. But more recently, some of their scientists that were working on these projects were able to do that.
Charlie, mention the radar on the larger ones, GOLAD build, the radar signatures.
Yeah, no, well, that's true. I mean, they detected on one of their 44-meter pyramids, they were able to detect the energy field using radar and other equipment for up to, I think it was 150 kilometers, something like that, away from the pyramid.
It was both vertically and circumferentially.
But in my little world, my significant other is a holistic dentist and a naturopath, and she uses a device called a Lecher antenna, Lecher. It's basically a high-tech dowsing rod, but it's frequency specific. It was developed about 100 years ago by an Austrian physicist named Ernst Lecher to determine ley lines and so forth. So we can use that to determine these energy fields. It's qualitative in nature, it's not quantitative, but that's the way we have historically shown the existence of these energy fields visually. And we can look at different energy levels inside or types of energies inside the pyramid. For example, there is a frequency in the Lecher antenna for unity. Well, guess where that is? That's right up at the top of the pyramid, because that's where time and space all start to come together when these things are just spinning like crazy. You will find, we can determine Earth and cosmic energy and things like that. So that's what we've used. But I'm looking, as I'm sure, we'd all like to have those kinds of devices, but we haven't really been able to find them. It's easier to almost, other than that kind of a qualitative measurement, that's why we need research. We need to show the effects of something being exposed to the pyramid and show those results, because it's very difficult to measure torsion fields.
Yeah, fascinating.
But it is, Kozyrev and the Russians have done that. We just don't have that technology over here, to my knowledge.
And if somebody wants to go on your website and buy one of these pyramids, what's the website again?
StargatePyramids.com.
And you created a special discount code for my channel.
That's right. Yeah, I put a discount on for your group, Attwood 10%. So ATTWOOD 10 and the percent sign, and you'll get 10% off your pyramid.
And is it a pyramid shaped A or a little squiggly A?
Oh, either you mean upper or lowercase? It doesn't matter.
Well, because the A is a pyramid. It's the same shape.
Well, it is. It doesn't.
You hooked him.
It doesn't have the right slant angle, though.
Depends how you
I
write
was going to put it in the book if it did, but it doesn't.
So now you're rewriting the alphabet, Charlie.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you're brilliant.
I know. Now,
Let's rewrite it based on sacred geometry.
one other thing that I'd like to offer to your viewers is the following. I am looking, because I think EMFs are such an important topic
So do I.
for discussion. I know that if there are any EMF sensitive, hypersensitive, whatever term you want to use, people that are out there, I am more than willing to offer a discount, a much bigger discount. I'll give it to you for 50%, half off, if you'll email me and tell me about it and be willing to share your results, because we're looking for people who have that kind of sensitivity to do research on. So,
Well, that's very interesting.
Throw that out.
There's a lot of viewers I've got that are healers and very interested in all this kind of stuff. So that's if I had time, I'd do it.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we're, I'm also looking for any healers who would like to help us in the documentation work with this. If people, if this sounds exciting, contact me. And that would be at stargatepyramids@yahoo.com is my email address. If you're interested, if you have a sensitivity or whatever, call me and, let's talk about it, because I'm not doing this. I worked on Wall Street for money, and I'm not doing this for money anymore. I have to make a living, but, I'm doing this because I really want people to learn that healing is energy based. We are all energy, frequency, and vibration, as
exactly
said. And so, all we need to do is to get those energy fields, no matter what kind of energy healing we're doing. We're all working with the same field. We can harmonize it, improve it. We're going to improve our health.
100%. And I think after all those years on Wall Street, you're making amends very well.
Yeah.
I'll end with that, because I told Michael this just over the weekend. I worked in New York City in the 70s when I first started. I wasn't the guy who thought up mortgage-backed securities, but I was the young kid who had to put it together. Nobody had ever figured out how to take mortgages and turn them into bonds and get them rated and figure out what happens if your bonds prepay, all that stuff. So the structure, that's what I did. So the reason I got out was 2008, the world fell apart, and I took it pretty personally. That was sort of my dark night of the soul. So I just had to get out.
Well, there's another book there.
There is another book there.
Yeah. I'm a publisher, by the way. I'll publish it. Go on then. Clinical applications.
Okay. Okay. I made a few notes. Let me back up to a couple of other anecdotal stories. And here, as I'm talking, I'm going to pull up the last treatment setup I had. Okay, here we go. So this is an 8-foot pyramid, as I said, with a very large quartz crystal as a capstone. And you notice the design I have, you can, and by the way, Charlie's design now with the zip ties was inspired by we've already worked together. Anyway, Charlie and I have only reconnected for about a week, but I already have plans to do some clinical assessments. And as a chiropractor, I have neurological assessments I can do pre and post treatment that tell me 100% is the patient better, worse, or the same, regardless of what they tell me. Okay. So this setup, you can see there's a massage table with the upper torso.
Way of zooming in on that at all, Mike?
I can't. And it's because, This is my second Zoom time. Charlie busted my Zoom hymen, so I apologize. I'll try, but okay. So you can see there's a massage table.
I just know some people will say, "Could you make it bigger?" But I did try, guys.
Well, just give it some Viagra. Do you know what happens to a lawyer when he takes Viagra?
3 blokes over 50 doing these kind of gags. It's great.
Do you know what happens to a lawyer when he takes Viagra?
No.
He gets taller. Okay. So
hey, hang on. I'm going to do my scientist joke then. If you're going to do.
Okay.
So the science I studied at university was known as the dismal science, economics. Okay. So the joke we used to have is that there's a physicist, a chemist, and an economist, and they're stuck on a desert island, and they've got no food, but then this tin washes up on the shore, and the chemist says, "Don't worry, guys, I've got it. What we do is we put this in the sea, we hold it down. Eventually, the salt water will corrode it, and we'll get into the tin, and we can eat the food." The physicist says, "No. I'll take my glasses off, and I'll use that to direct the sun's energy to heat up the tin, so we can cut through it using basically a laser." And the economist says, "Guys, you're completely wrong. All we've got to do is assume we have a tin opener." The only economists will get that joke.
Okay, now I have one that's way too off color to tell. The same type of joke I'd want to share with you, Mark. At some point.
We'll do that after the show.
Yeah, we will. Okay, so back to, see, this is how I practice. When I was in my left brain and figuring it out, then I figured out, and then I'd be cracking jokes to my patients, because that's partly healing. It is healing.
It is healing.
Okay, so this is let me back up. I'll pull up, I just pulled these off the internet, but this is Light Mandala, the company that builds these lasers. Now, this is their
you sent me these earlier. They're extraordinary.
Yeah, this is their latest permutation derived from what I just showed you. So when I started doing the pyramids, I got in touch with them as a clinician, and I said, "Hey, look, this is working better." So now, this derived from me telling them 3 years ago that I'm using a pyramid. Now they're using, it looks like a Giza geometry with the laser at the top, which I never thought of. And you can see there's a singing bowl and all. So this is like, they're using the same lasers that I have, but they're advancing as well as, as they should. Let me pull one more up
again, because that disappeared. That came up and
that same one. Okay, yeah. Let me know if you want me to leave that up.
Yeah, leave it up. It's beautiful.
So, okay, so this will help me explain the laser. So in the top, you see a black box. Now, when I first saw this, who's that bloke that was in Florida, the Keys somewhere, and he did the same thing? He had a black box and a tripod, and he was moving like multi-ton blocks of limestone.
Oh, hang on. That's the guy in the...
You know who I'm talking about, right?
No, that's the high-level mason who was basically using sound waves to build.
But doesn't, remember, I saw pictures. He had a tripod with a black box on top, and that just looks,
to lift heavy blocks, because all the guys that delivered the heavy blocks, they didn't understand how he was building it, because they only ever saw
he was all by himself.
His own, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, but so the black box is the actual laser. Now, Mark, this is a whole story about how this guy Alex, who's an engineer from Egypt, developed this. He got really rich, it was internet or something, and he wanted to give back. So he brought in 85 of the top in their field, whether it was a yogi instructor, a nutritionist, astrologers. So within the laser, and he also wanted to do open source. In other words, not parts you can buy at Ace Hardware, but he didn't want to have to go to someone to build it, because he was trying to get away from the patent thing, which he knew it would get sequestered. Okay, so they consulted with, martial artists and all this stuff. So within the actual light projection, there's several different frequencies of light, but there are actual sacred geometry symbols in the light. Okay, so when you're ready, I'll show you the next slide.
Yeah, please do.
But before I do, I just want you to notice, see the little glowing ball right below the black box?
Yeah.
Okay, that is a 3-inch quartz crystal. Okay, it's intentionally there. And see, this is where we're all talking the same language. That creates a random, very complex distortion pattern, which leaves, it creates more volume to transmit the frequencies of healing. Now, this will tie back to Nassim Harim. When I heard him about 5 years ago, I heard him say, "What about the space?" Because I studied physics, and at 12 years, or no, I guess it was 14 when I got into high school. I was like, "What about the space? We're always talking about these little particles and the Heisenberg improbability, the probability of the electron being here or the electron." So, but it's the space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me switch slides here. Okay, I'm going to go back to, where is it? Oh, here we go. Okay, so this ties in with the slide that Charlie had up earlier, or I put up earlier, about the DNA and the light, right? Okay, so same doctor, they took a salamander embryo and a frog embryo. They shone a laser through the salamander onto the frog, and the frog became a salamander.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did it the other way around.
Yep.
So now, I can go into the details of actually how this works. It will not work. It has to work before what's called differentiation, which is where the cells all of a sudden start to decide, oh, well, I'm going to be nervous. So it has to happen before then. But think about when I saw this second time around, and I knew we were talking, I thought about it, and I'm like, it really made me wonder about these half animal, half man beasts that were around.
Chimeras.
I mean, chimeras. Look at,
all in mythology. And that,
I mean, they're talking to us about CRISPR and this and that, like you go in and snip a gene.
Yeah.
No, it just takes a laser. Now, how this is transmitted, it's not the light. It's so about constructive and destructive interference. Okay, so that crystal creates both. Now, it's in those what I was taught were dead zones. The destructive interference spot, that is the 0 point where the information is carried in a laser. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. I can pause there. I can let me look at okay, so a couple other things. I believe the medium through which, so there are scalar waves, which are standing waves, right? I believe the medium is plasma. And it's around us right now.
Have you seen the plasma videos that have been up on YouTube the last 2 weeks?
No, I'll go look at them though.
They're amazing. Gina Maria Colvin Hill, her YouTube.
Colvin Hill? Okay.
Gina Maria Colvin Hill. she's been taking footage from CCTV cameras all over the planet.
Yes, I've seen it.
Plasma, and there was Dublin from the other night where the plasma, you could see the good plasma beating the bad plasma. It's just.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, when I heard her say that they're Arcturians, see, I'm
no, she
99%.
never said that. She never said that.
Who said that?
JCK said that.
Right.
So when JC did the pendulum, she's an amazing medium. When she did
the
pendulum, it said Arcturians healing the earth. And if you look at these ones in Dublin in particular, you'll see the plasma is healing the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
The buildings are full of dark energy. And that's part of why I think we're all in lockdown, because all this is going on.
See, look, here's a good question. What if we had one of those, what if these pyramids are also, they start to attract these plasma beings?
Well, that's a big possibility.
Like Charlie doesn't have a CCT camera on his pyramid.
Set one up, put it in the garden.
And our eyes don't pick it up. It's only cameras.
Yeah. Cameras that are picking it up.
That's but anyway,
cameras earlier.
Right. I believe outer space is plasma, what I call plasma soup.
Yeah.
I mean, you won't survive out there the way in this meat suit, but I think it's plasma soup. So that's the medium that the scalar rays are carried in. These other waves like the laser and the solfeggio frequencies that are used on this biofeedback system I'm using, those are all carried in those void places, which is the 0 point. Okay, so I've done a lot of Tai Chi. Let me just demonstrate something really quick. I can't show you the whole body, but out of silk reeling, there's a movement we do like this, and it's basically an infinity symbol. I don't know if I'm coming out of camera or not.
No, I can see what you.
Okay, so here is 9. Yeah. So here's 9.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever listened to Cliff High?
Yes.
Okay, so when did you hear the talk he did about how I think I'm moving my hand, but I'm like I'm materializing and dematerializing like a trillion times a second.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the same idea, but it's a different way of looking at it. So at right here, my left hand is 3 and my right hand is 6. See, I don't have to explain all the math. You get it. So 3, 6, 9.
3, 6, 9.
And then it switches. Remember, he said it switches. So then 3, 6, 9.
Which is Tesla, which is scalar waves, which is the key.
Right. 9 is the 0 point. Okay. Yeah. So when I really do this, I can feel the plasma in my hands. I feel like I'm pulling taffy.
When I do this, because I've done the Tai Chi.
You can feel it.
I've thrown energy balls at my kids, and they go,
of course. Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely. Once you understand how to tap into it, and there's many paths up the same mountain.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie's figured out that way, and we've all figured it out. But I think it's now time for all of us to come together. Beautiful. To use Charlie Ward's analogy, I think we all have a puzzle we're working on.
Oh, I do too.
I told Charlie this. There's a giant puzzle, and I have like a square meter, and I'm like working along, and then all of a sudden I bump somebody, and I'm like, oh, there's Charlie. And now I've bumped into you.
Yeah, so. My analogy is that we're on a 7 billion piece multi-dimensional chessboard, and we're all being around precisely as we're meant to be in order to achieve the ultimate objective.
So I can wrap this up now. So to get back to what I said about the clinical research, Charlie and I just reconnected. Now, I'm one of the perfect people to do this research, obviously because I'm already. But I know how to I know how to document it in a way that's as valid as anybody can consider it to be. So I have, and I'll share this later, whatever I'll share with you. I'm a healer. Doctor translated means teacher. And that's what I've always been. I don't fix people. I don't take responsibility when they get well. That's their own body. I get to watch miracles. I'm just a facilitator for God. But by the way, I had a heat stroke about 18 months ago, and sometimes my brain still just goes on pause, and it just did that. So, so I have these neuro workups that I developed with the help of other colleagues because I need something to hang my hat on, okay, as a practitioner. So that's my left brain saying, hey, so I can do these, and I've done this for 20 years. I use this pre and post neuro test, and I can objectively say, they're better, worse, or the same. And it doesn't, I've had many patients say, I don't feel any better, doc. But my findings say, you're a lot better. And it's funny because about 2 weeks later, they're like kind of tail between the legs, like, hey, doc, I'm better. So.
But it's like nobody ever remembers pain. My kid.
They'll come in with low back pain 2 weeks later. They're like, I go, how's your low back? They go, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's gone. They don't remember it.
Or even after the appointment.
I know,
I'm like, how's your neck pain? They're like, what are you talking about?
That's why so many natural remedies are so easy to debunk, because most of the people that have been cured just don't remember being ill.
That's right.
It's amazing.
Have you ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
I haven't. No, that sounds interesting.
Oh, it's about what we're talking about. It is. You got to watch it. It's a B movie but it's about the dumbing down of America.
Oh, is it based on the works of the woman that wrote The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America?
I don't know. It's hilarious.
I've not read that. You can get it free online, and it was written by the Education Secretary under.
I'd love to read it.
Brilliant book.
I mean, I can give you like a 30-second teaser. Okay, this guy who's in the military, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed by any means. He's lucky if he gets triple-digit IQ, and he volunteers for a cryogenic program run by the military. Okay, so. Y'all go. So he is 85 or whatever, and they say, okay, we're going to wake you up in 50 years. He goes, okay. So, 20 years down the road, the project lost funding. So they stuffed him in a warehouse. But there was an automatic time lock to open him up at some point. So, 50, 60 years after they put him in there, he comes out, he's the smartest guy on the whole planet. The president is a professional wrestler. Okay, anything you want, you got to go to Costco. If you want a law degree, you go to Costco. If you want to go see a comedy show, you go to Costco. Brilliant. If you want a coffee, you have to go to Costco. Guess why?
That sounds like the world now.
That's what I'm saying. It's a documentary. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you want a coffee, you have to go to Costco. Guess why?
Why?
Starbucks becomes a brothel. So, a latte is up and a. I thought, with knowing your sense of humor, I think your audience would enjoy it. It's a lot like They Live in that terms of like being it's a documentary.
Yeah.
They're letting us know that, and it's happened. Look, The Rock almost ran for president. You know who The Rock is? Yeah. Back when they had, whatever, however many, he was like, I'm going to win. It almost came true. But the rest,
child murder.
The rest of it is true.
Yeah.
Anyway, that kind of, I would love to talk to you more about, there's a lot of,
I'm always aware of the audience, and I try not to give them super, super long. I think that was packed with fascinating information. Extraordinary gentleman, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you. And you know what? Let me just shout out my website. I'm not actively practicing, but my website is still up. Feel free to look at the photos before and after, and you're going to see changes that aren't just your posture. So my website, it's nothing fancy, but it's called cranialdocmaui.com. That's Cranial, CRANIAL DOC Maui MAUI.com.
Right, send me the links, because some people are going to watch this and go, what was it? Nothingfancy.com.
What did? Right. Yeah, I'll send you a link.
I'll put all the links in the description below the video. I'll put them in as a pinned post. I'll also email them out, so make sure you're on my email list, and the links are in.
I already am, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to them.
Oh,
perfect.
So, guys, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Mark. Enjoyed it.
Really amazing. I'll be in touch with you both afterwards. So thanks for watching, everybody, and take care. See you soon.
Aloha.
Take care.
Aloha.